more. Congressman, thank you for coming on.
Diane, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me on today.
So in the Democratic response to President Trump's address, Senator Elissa Slotkin said that she also wants a more efficient government, but she criticized how the Trump administration is trying to achieve that. I want to play part of her remarks for you.
You want to cut waste? I'll help you do it. But change doesn't need to be chaotic or make us less safe. The mindless firing of people who work to protect our nuclear weapons, keep our planes from crashing, and conduct the research that finds the cure for cancer, only to rehire them 2 days later?
So House Republicans are set to meet with Elon Musk later today. What do you want to hear, and do you think he needs to change his approach at all?
No, in fact, I think it's all good. And the reason I do is because we're finding a lot of bad stuff, Diane, and that's the bottom line. At the end of the day, we're the stewards of the taxpayer in the nation and so we're finding stuff, and part of this is due to Elon Musk and this DOGE effort that is just incredibly wasteful and fraudulent. And why wouldn't everybody celebrate that? I mean, if we can identify enough dead people that we're paying Social Security to, as embarrassing as it is, that's money that we can put back in the system and salvage it over the course of time. So no, I mean, it's always unpleasant for somebody when you find something wasteful or fraudulent. But in the case of what is happening right now, I think it's a good thing. We should keep going.
And Congressman, we should point out that the Social Security Commissioner says some of those issues that were talked about in the speech last night are issues, peculiar issues with the data, and it doesn't necessarily mean those people are receiving Social Security benefits. But I do want to also ask you about this new directive. Sources tell ABC News the chair of the National Republican Congressional Committee is encouraging lawmakers to do virtual events instead of in-person town halls after backlash over some of Elon Musk's cuts and layoffs. Democrats say that shows Republicans are afraid of their own constituents. What's your response to that? And are you planning to follow the advice?
Yeah, well, first of all, some of the Social Security stuff that they're finding is indeed fraudulent, too. I might point that out. But, you know, there are those who seem to go off the rails, whether in a public forum of some sort. And frankly, I don't get it. I mean, last night I thought the optics were extremely bad for some of my friends on the other side of the aisle. I mean, if they're going to pick something like men and women's sports and pick that political hill to die on, they will die on that hill. And so, and if they're going to pick the fight on, pulling fraud and waste out of clearly fraudulent and wasteful situations, they will die on that hill. And so, are we going to get pushback in town hall meetings and public settings? Yeah, we are, because there are some people who are believing the lie that somehow they're being abused in this process. But the bottom line is they're not. I think the bulk of America sees that. I can tell you the bulk of Idahoans see that. And so, no, I continue to do what I do now. I'm going to do public events, and there'll be blowback, and that's okay. Once you explain it, the high ground will win, and I think we will.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau called President Trump's tariffs a dumb move yesterday. He says they'll retaliate with tariffs of their own. What's your message to constituents who are concerned about rising prices and more inflation?
Well, there's two things to consider overall in a governance perspective. You got a trade imbalance in most cases where the U.S. is importing more than we're exporting. We want to give our manufacturers and the people that sell from the U.S. a level playing field. That's the first thing. Second thing is the Homeland Security component, Diane. I mean, as you know, the fentanyl deaths are going nuts, and it's a scourge on our nation. And some of the countries are explicit in allowing this to come in. And so there's got to be something done to try to stop that. So generally speaking, I approve of the effort. Is there going to be some short-term pain? Maybe. But is it worth it to level the playing field and to secure our kids from getting illegal fentanyl? Yeah, I think it is, and it's a decision we just need to be made. And last night, the speech, by the way, the president made a statement that I hadn't heard before, which was announced the potential of reciprocal tariffs in April. How can you argue against that? I mean, if China wants to set, or if Canada or whatever wants to set what that tariff is, and know that that's coming back to them, that sounds like a reasonably fair approach to me.
Now, Trump is also calling on Congress to balance the budget. So is there a budget proposal right now that does that?
Yeah, in fact, last week we passed a framework, and it's just a framework, and it was really close, 217, 215. But what it does is it sets the stage to actually change the trajectory of spending in Washington, D.C. And that's never happened in my career and maybe in my lifetime. But all this does is it says we're not going to spend more than we're going to take in. Sounds like a novel idea, sounds like common sense, but the bottom line is, look, we're 36 trillion in debt, and that won't solve the debt, but it will potentially help on the spending side. Now we got to we duplicate the effort by increasing our economic growth. So it's a tandem effort. Reduce the spending trajectory, not overall, but just the trajectory of the increase, and then turn up the economic growth. Then you got a shot at doing something about the debt. So it's positive news here, and we should all be optimistic about that.
So do you think Congress can avoid a government shutdown next week? And will Speaker Johnson need Democratic votes in order to do that?
I do think we can avoid the shutdown. I don't know if we're going to do it without or with Democrat votes. I sure hope so. You know, at the end of the day, when people see the end result of this budget and they see that there's actually some thought going into where the taxpayer money goes, I think generally speaking, it's going to be received well. After all, remember, 36 trillion in debt is not sustainable. Any appropriation we make is an invoice to our kids and our grandkids. We owe them better than that.
All right, Republican Congressman Russ Fulcher of Idaho, we appreciate your time today, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane.